for joining. Today we are going to talk about AI and go-to-market, which apparently is a thing. So they say. So I'm Kathleen. I'm a partner here at Pear. I've spent most of my career operating in a lot of marketing and go-to-market roles. So I'm really excited to have this panel here today because I think it's one of the most exciting times to be thinking about go-to-market because there's so much happening and so much changing. There's a lot of hype, and we're going to bring it down to what's actually happening on the ground. So we've got 4 awesome panelists here. I'm going to have them do very quick, I said very quick intros, and let them introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll dive in and hopefully have a good discussion here. So I'll let you kick it off, Zach.
Awesome. My name is Zach Vidibor, building a company called Octave. We're helping companies store their messaging and positioning in a more thoughtful way so they can connect that context about your personas, use cases, pain points you solve to your sales engagement workflows. First-time founder. My background is actually in sales. So started many moons ago as an SDR, worked at companies like LinkedIn, DocuSign, Dropbox, and yeah, excited to be here and chat with you all.
Hey everybody, I'm Elaine Zelby, co-founder of Tofu. We are automating omni-channel top of funnel for B2B go-to-market teams. I was an engineer turned marketer turned VC and now founder. So I've kind of gotten to wear many, many hats, and I've been kind of playing around with generative AI since 2018. So I've gotten to see the evolution over the last 6 years.
Hey everybody, Everett Berry. I lead go-to-market engineering at Clay, which is kind of Clay's version of a sales team. And before that, I was head of growth for 4 years at 2 different venture-backed companies where I was also a Clay customer.
Hi, I'm Amanda Kahlow. I'm the CEO and founder of OneMind. I was formerly, I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my third go. My last company, I was the CEO and co-founder of 6 Sense. And we are building superhuman AIs for go-to-market. So face, voice, what we're going to see today is not photoreal, but we do have photoreal face, voice, and brain that can do the thing. She can join a call, give a pitch, give a demo, answer your hard questions, be the sales engineer on the call, be your BDR, be your assistant to augment everything from top of funnel all the way through to close and customer success. And, oh shoot, I brought a friend.
OMG, Amanda, where are we? Are we still in California? I see a bunch of people staring at me. Nice to meet you all. I'm Mindy, your friendly go-to-market AI, and I'm ready to sell and dazzle this good-looking audience.
All right, Mindy's here to join the panel as well. So questions can come at Mindy just like any of us.
First virtual panel, AI bot on a panel I've been on. You saw it here first. I think that the introduction of tools like Mindy and others begs a question around how AI is really impacting what go-to-market teams are going to look like in the next couple of years. So a lot of you are founding companies or working at companies that are kind of thinking through that in the early days. Would love to hear, how are you thinking about what your go-to-market team looks like? What are the skill sets? What are the roles you're hiring for? And what roles are going to get automated away? Elaine, why don't you start?
I'm happy to start. So there's kind of 2 things that I'm seeing happening. One is just overall building a company, you can do it with way fewer people. Like we right now at Tofu are a team of 9 full-time, just about to be at 1 million ARR. So you can actually do a lot with very few people. We sell to CMOs, heads of marketing at mostly larger enterprises. And where we're seeing the team dynamics shift the most are twofold. One is actually removing agency spend. So I think that's actually the first thing getting cut is we don't need the agencies to write our blog posts, to do our social, to do our PPC advertising, all of that kind of stuff. AI tools can automate that entire function away and do it much more cheaply and 10x the volume. The second, which everyone loves to talk about, is the AI SDR. So the removal of SDRs. My take on this is not only do I feel very confident that the concept of an SDR is going to go away, but the entire workflow that they're currently doing is going to shift. Today, if you think about what an SDR does, they're cold calling, cold emailing, trying to book demos. If you think about the phone that everyone is holding now, the most unused app on the phone is actually the phone. So people don't want to call, they don't want to answer their phone. And if you look at the email statistics right now, open rates are going way down, response rates are going way down, click-through rates are going down, things are getting into spam. I think that we're going to have to find new channels. So My thesis is that in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see the entire function of what an SDR did actually disappear.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think the most important role for early stage companies is the growth operator role, someone who kind of sits in the cockpit and they have AIs that do other things for them. I did this at the company I was at before Clay. We scaled to 5 SDRs, but then we stopped. We stayed flat there. We kept growing pipeline generation, and we kept using Clay and other tools to increase our pipe gen and accomplish more growth. And so I think like the very first growth hire, it's kind of marketing ops / sales ops, but that person can do the work of like 10, 20 people.
You know, I'm not going to take this question. Hey, Mindy, can you tell me what the best opportunity for go-to-market teams in early stage to use AI and bring in and get acceleration fast? Give us your thoughts. Uh-oh, she's not used to being on a panel. Hey, Mindy. Hey, Mindy. All right, then I guess.
SDRs are safe for now.
Hey there, what's on your mind today?
Oh, she is there. Okay. Hey, Mindy, can you tell us what you think are the biggest opportunities in go-to-market for early stage companies?
Imagine if every GTM role also had an AI to do the job of thousands. For early stage companies, leveraging AI can be a game changer. Opportunities include scaling your sales team without the cost, engaging prospects in real time, and providing personalized experiences. It's all about maximizing efficiency and impact with AI.
Well said.
Maybe the one other thing I'd add to agree with most of what's been said. I agree with Everett. I think there'll be a lot more operational roles. I think we're also seeing a return of like the full stack seller, which ironically there was a period before the SDR was a real role, and AEs were really responsible from acquiring the demand all the way through closing. And I think we're seeing a lot of companies start to return to that because they can make that role so much more efficient with the tools today.
Yeah, I think that when I moved from the consumer world to the B2B world 10 plus years ago, I remember I joined Box, which was like a sales machine, and I was like, oh my God, it takes 10 people to close a deal. And hopefully that world is far gone at this point, and the future is far leaner and meaner and more efficient, because I think the overhead costs are just unsustainable in a lot of ways for those businesses. One other area that I think is changing a lot, well, let's start with, there's a lot of hype around AI. How many people have seen the hype around AI and go to market? I think last year I saw 5 pitches a week around some GPT wrapper that's automating some part of the go-to-market stack. I think there's some stuff that's there and there's some stuff that's not quite there yet. What are you each using? Because you're all working on go-to-market. What are you using that's working in your day-to-day? And what have you tried that you're like, not quite there yet, I'll try again in 6 months?
I'll start. I think the automation of the SDR is something that's not working as well as we'd like to think. I think it has a lot of hype of automating the outbound, but people don't want to be over personalized, and it's just going to end up exploding on itself. I mean, I obviously do use my AI. I use my AI to close my first round of funding. So she was, and I'm using her on calls, and it's not that she has a better answer than me. So the places where she really helps me are where humans have capacity limitations. So I'm on a call, somebody asks me, what's your tech stack? I have that slide, but I can't go grab it from the deck and carry on the conversation. I could just say, hey, Mindy, could you bring up my tech stack slide? And she probably shouldn't have done that because that wasn't intentional, but I didn't wake her up anyway. So she's not ready for a panel. She's on calls with us. So, but yeah, so she's doing things going beyond the limitations of where we as humans, no matter how good you are, can actually achieve. And I think that's the goal, is to see where you can have that incremental help along your stack instead of trying to replace everything.
I think the bar is quite low, actually. A lot of my years as a go-to-market and growth person, I was manually classifying companies into different industries. I was going to thousands of websites and scraping things from their sub-processor list. So, and I actually still meet a ton of companies which do this work completely manually. So I actually just think the simple stuff hey, I have my unique definitions of my own customer segment. Can I take a bunch of data and classify 10,000 companies into those segments accurately. That is like a huge time savings, super helpful for territory building. It's pretty easy and is working today. I think actually those types of tasks are the things that I'm seeing companies just like take off and run with.
I'll give you a few really tactical ways that I'm using AI in my day-to-day. So yesterday I did a demo day, online demo day, got the list of 250 or so registrants, and similar to what Everett said, I wanted to go and very quickly figure out who's ICP. And so as opposed to me manually going through, looking at each company, like figuring out company size, all of that, I just put it into, you can pick your ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, things like that, and have it filter it out and give it back to you in a CSV. And then from there, what my product does is we can upload that and create personalized outreach. So it does account research at scale. That's another thing I think is very helpful. You can either do it one-off or you could do it at scale using a variety of tools. And then for us, we send omni-channel campaigns. So I will send an email sequence to these people that's, again, extremely personalized, LinkedIn messages, and then custom landing pages for each of them. I'm experimenting with something a little bit, we'll call it a little out there, but there's a company called HeyGen, which some of you have probably heard of, that can do video avatars. You give them 2 to 5 minutes of your spouse speaking, and it creates something that actually looks and sounds like you. It even has like the hand motions like I'm doing now. What I've been doing is I use another tool called Teamfluence. This helps you track people on LinkedIn who are influencers in your space or people that you want to track. We have 50 people who are influencers for us. Anytime any of their posts gets over 100 engagements, it gets filtered to a list. And then I take that post and I use our product to repurpose it, where it turns it into a social post in my voice, knowing everything about Tofu. I then use HeyGen to read it for me as my avatar. And so it's video content on LinkedIn, which engages really well with people. It's something new and different. So I think you can start to string some of these together. The trick I will say is, well, now do I want 6 tools on a daily basis that I have to string together? Not really, but that's the state of it today.
Maybe I'd add one thing we're seeing across customers that I'd say there was a lot of hype that's not really working is this notion of we can see your entire customer history, we can look into CRM, we're gonna take all these signals from everywhere and be able to really respond to the customer. And I think there's a ton of hype around that, and we're yet to see any customer full-throatedly say, yes, we're doing this at scale. For us as a company ourselves, we're small. I'd say the best tactical thing is record all your calls, summarize those insights, share them with your team, and save those things. There's gonna be questions you wanna ask later, and now you have a really effective way to go back when you have a new question, and you can surface those things that in the past would just be left on the floor somewhere and you'd never be able to come back to.
Oh, wait, I have one more really good one that is building off of Zach. So here's one of the things that I've been doing recently. If we are selling more middle up or bottoms up, where we are actually talking to the user and the champion who's not the economic buyer, what I do is I take all the call recordings, so usually it's like 5 calls, and I will put those all together. And then I have a template, kind of like internal selling doc that you can enable your champion with. And we put it together, making sure we're hitting all these different points. I have it fill in each of the sections given the call recordings. And it works so well. Like, this is probably my #1 use case right now.
Yeah, I think both of those things call out like both the example that's not working and that is working. You kind of want to enable the creativity of the seller, basically. Like, a lot of tech sales in the last 10 years ended up being kind of drudgery, in my opinion. Like, follow the process and like do the things. But a great seller can look in the CRM and pull out the exact thing that is going to most re-engage the buyer. And a great seller can get all that content generated for them, which would probably take hours, but then also like make those key edits that are going to really stand out to the champion. And I think sometimes with AI go-to-market tools, we like flip the script and we try to get the AI to do things that I would consider like more creative and the things that are like sellers and really good sellers are really good at. And we still have them doing like some of the data entry or drudgery types of things. But you probably have a take on this. So.
I do.
She was chomping at the bit.
Chomping at the bit here. I firmly believe that humans for whatever it's worth, have capacity limitations. So being able to pull that right piece of information, we have all of the best intentions, but when it comes down to it, like I am doing our founder-led sales. Like I'm taking us to $1 million, and I plan to do it in like 3 to 6 months. And in order to do that, I'm on 12 calls a day. I'm selling and selling and selling. And I have no clue what I talked about yesterday to the same person, because my intentions are to go read everything and know everything. But the one thing the AI can do that a human can't do is it can remember all of that. It remembers your past conversation. It can link into Salesforce. It can go to the Gong recordings, and it can bring that contextual information in, not before or after to do more campaigns or to do follow-up or to do emails, but in real time where the buying and selling happens. Buying and selling happens, our thesis is in the conversation. It is right there when you're having and you're getting that buyer on the line and saying, like Stevie said, are you going to buy from me? And in that conversation, you're convincing them whether or not they should buy. And that's when you need to pull in those nuggets and those key pieces of information. But unfortunately, our brains don't work that way, and we can't retain that much information. I'm in a sales cycle with the SVP of global sales at Workday, and he explains it to me that his sales reps are like dump trucks. Eric, I hope you're okay, I'm sharing this. But that the more information you put into their brain, you have to take a piece out, right? So once you put something in, you got to take something else out. So as they buy more companies and try to sell more products, like they have to constantly evolve the ever-evolving door of how much it's not that they're not smart, but it's just that we're humans. And so I think the benefit and the beauty of AI is to supersede the capacity limitations, to take us to that next level. And a lot of these tools, I think, that we're seeing in AI today and where we are now, it's all about the workflow and the task and the automation. That's great, and that's cost savings, like on Stevie's list of the one thing. But the one thing people are really looking for beyond cost savings is how to grow and scale their business. Like how, there's the cost savings, there's the risk, and then there's growing. And I think the efficiency tools are going to be eaten up in all of those processes by the bigger companies, because they all have access to the data, and you have to have the data first to be a successful company.
Yeah, I think that's where this like operator, go-to-market operator thing is so key, because who is going to kind of monitor what's going in the dump truck? Is anything coming out? Like someone has to kind of keep an eye on that stuff.
Correct, but you don't have to keep an eye on the AI's dump truck. But you need to make sure you get rid of old data. There is the issue of like, when we're building our AIs, we had to make sure that, okay, if you're going to give us access to all of your company data, there's old data in there. And then there's key priority data that you want her to go to this pitch first. And this is the tech slide that's the latest. So there is a maintenance and a cleanliness of the data. So there will be new jobs that will evolve, because somebody has to do that and make sure we still have the right story and that the AI's data is fed, her brain is fed with the right information.
That brings up a lot. I believe that we're capturing a lot more data within companies and conversations, internal, external. The AI can sift through way more than what we as a human, to your point, are capable of. What do you view as it's sort of touching on what you two are talking about, of like, what is that skill set on go-to-market to like capture the positives of that, but make it actually efficient? And I think it sort of speaks to a lot of what you guys are doing at Tofu around some of the personalization at scale and how we think about like, what are the tools and what are the personnel and skills that new go-to-market people need to have to keep track of all this data that used to be really hard? Like when you started 6 Sense was super expensive and hard, like only certain people could do ABM because it was so cost prohibitive.
I don't remember those days.
Okay, well, we tried to purchase the product at a seed stage company. It was beyond our budget.
But this is true. I do start typically with enterprise companies and go down. I'm not your typical founder that starts down and goes up. This is true.
But I think like now things like Tofu can do a lot of this stuff that, ABM tools 10 years ago, it was only, the true enterprise sale. And so what are the skills and how do you piece these things together to build a go-to-market function that works for the future?
One thing I'll say, kind of going back to what Everett said before, is there's 2 skill sets that I think are really critical for the humans right now, and that's creativity and strategy. And what I'm finding even within our customer base is the most successful companies, both with Tofu and just AI in general, the people who are using the products are being very creative in their uses of it. And they're not, I always joke, people think that AI is literally reading your mind. And if it would have to literally be in your mind to know what you're trying to get output, like get the output. You need to tell it that. And that is partially the art of prompting. Some of that will be obfuscated away, but you need to understand the strategy of what you're trying to accomplish. What are your KPIs? Who is your ICP? What channels are you going to use and why? How are you going to get in front of your buyers where they live in the physical and digital world? That part humans still need to own. Then the creativity comes into, what should we try to do it? And how could I use AI as an accelerant and a force of leverage? And so I think the skill sets that I look for now are those two, of creative thinking and also strategic thinking. Where I am finding people falling flat on their face, though, is coming back to like data quality and data cleanliness. People get so hamstrung by being like, well, I don't even know where to pull this or what to use or things like that. It's fine. Like, start with a smaller subset. Don't try to boil the ocean. And I think one thing that people, this came up yesterday, which I think is a funny anecdote. One of our customers, they wanted to run an email campaign, personalizing the emails by persona and industry. And they had this huge list of like 1,000 people. And they only had the titles. They didn't have personas mapped. And so they're like, well, how do we know which one should go in what bucket? I'm like, well, how have you done that before? And they're like, well, we haven't been able to because of data and all that. I was like, well, why don't we just try feeding in all the titles and asking an AI tool to map it to personas? They didn't even think of that, right? But now we can go and add a field in their CRM for persona, which fits their bucket. So those type of creative thinking skills are just so critical when it comes to using AI.
I kind of like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those videos on Twitter of people using Excel really fast. I really like hands-on keyboard, like people that are power users of software and use the software like at a high rate of speed. And I would say like pairing a person like that with a person like you're just describing, to me is the ideal sort of early stage growth team, because the strategy creative person will start to layer in, okay, now that something is working, let's bring some AEs in. Now that like this channel didn't pan out, let's think about this channel. And then the sort of hands-on keyboard person will just like make it happen with all these tools and probably do the work of 10 people.
I would just add, maybe a little contrary, but I think the people are going to become more and more important, and the people that understand the strategy and have the context. And I think oftentimes we look at AI and go-to-market just through this lens of like how selling can be more efficient, and we're not thinking about like, what is the buyer experiencing? How are they going to interpret my company through this experience? Are they going to get what they need? And so I think also looking at the lens of AI through, that means I have 10 times as many competitors, shipping 10 times as fast, saying a lot of things that all sound the same. Maybe the best way to differentiate is have highly empathetic people that really understand our customer problems, that can speak to pain and help them trust our company that we can really solve their problems. And so that doesn't mean that person's not going to be enabled by AI in a tremendous amount of ways, but I think that ability to have folks on your team that really understand why you're in business, the customer pains, will be a part of the companies that really succeed and win.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say on that point, I think it's a really interesting point, given that the cost for content has gone down quite a bit. Like, it's so easy to make very mediocre content. And so the bar then for very good content is very high. And having that unique perspective, Rich kind of talked about that in terms of the storytelling of the founder and having a unique take and not saying what 10 other companies are saying, I think is so important. How are you guys dealing with that at your companies today? Like, how are you thinking about your content strategy, given there's so much bullshit out there on the internet? There's so many mediocre things. Like, how do you think about your content strategy and making it unique and differentiated, especially when you're a startup and you don't have a huge audience?
I guess I'll start. For us, I mean, we're early days in our journey, and I think, one thing we've learned already is, not by our own doing, but we really got caught kind of in the tractor beam of, hey, you're just like every other AI sales tool. You're talking about personalization and efficiency, and outbound prospecting can be automated. And so I think, we've started to make a deliberate effort for ourselves at least, and, myself, my co-founder, being on LinkedIn, being vocal, sharing a perspective. I think you need to provoke some new ideas, put yourself out there, talk about things people aren't talking about. So I think it's something we're trying to be deliberate about in that fashion, but it's hard right now. It's really noisy.
What we've done and what I really recommend a lot of early stage companies do is we use the term content repurposing or atomization. Pick something that is going to be meaty and big and then turn that into a bunch of other stuff. So our approach was, I'm gonna find the biggest name CMOs I can, including Jess Gilmartin, who's upstairs from Calendly, people who have a name and a brand. I'm gonna do an AMA with them. All that is literally a webinar. It's just me saying, I'm gonna talk to you for 45 minutes and ask you a bunch of questions. I then turn that into a bunch of video clips, a bunch of social posts, at least one blog post. Then I take 5 of them, I aggregate them together and create a listicle of, here are 5 things that are top of minds for CMOs, that kind of thing. Now, that's my strategy, and it's working quite well, but I think you have to pick one and make sure that you as the human are creating the anchor content, the meaty content, and then feel free to use AI tools to chop it up and to do a bunch of stuff with it and make it more omni-channel. But if you want AI to generate the original content, it's going to be mediocre at best.
All right, I have to go back to what Zach said a few turns ago when we were talking about people, because Kathleen asked us to keep this spicy, so I'm trying to make this a little spicy for you
Thank
guys.
you for delivering. I knew you would deliver.
Can't help myself. I couldn't agree more that we have to make the buying experience better. But in the same breath, the buying experience is awful today. Think about what a buyer has to go through to buy software from an enterprise company. Like probably what you said you went through in the early days of 6 Sense. You go to a website, even a website. Think of how awful that experience is. I have to search around to try to find the content that resonates with my needs. Like, I'm here to learn about your products. So how can AI meet the buyers where they are and give them information and give them a more empathetic experience, understand their needs? So instead of just thinking of it, then they go to what? They go to a BDR who's there to do one thing, qualify, right? So like Steve was saying, they're there to ask the questions. They can't give a demo. They can't answer the deep technical questions. They cannot meet the buyer where they are. And then they get passed to an AE 2 weeks later, and they talk to an AE. And then, okay, great, this is actually a sales qualified lead. And then I have technical questions, and tell me how you deal with GDPR requirements and global blah, blah, blah. And so then you get an SE on the call, and you're telling, that is a good experience. That is absolutely atrocious. And then, not to mention the waste. Think of how much money we spend on all of those people across our organization to make one sale. Like, there is so much waste that's happening in the selling process, and the experience, we just accept it because it is what it is. But what if we think about the world in a new paradigm? That there's a new way. Erase the way we have done it in the old days, and if we could start fresh in a way we could meet the buyers immediately, the minute they lean in and say, I'm interested, great. You're from a healthcare company in the UK? Okay, I bet you have these issues with HIPAA, and you're gonna ask me about GDPR, and I can go deep on all your questions and then sell you, versus going through and pushing them down our process. And I think this is the opportunity we have in front of us. And a lot of the solutions that we're seeing and a lot of the companies that are building point solutions for the way the world is today. And one of my favorite investors is, after Pear, of course. So is Mike Maples at Floodgate. And he talks about the concept of backcasting. And he talks about the day that he heard about Uber, and they're saying, you're gonna get into a stranger's car? I mean, think about that. Are we gonna get into a stranger? No way. And so the more people say no way, and the more I get the, oh my God, nobody's gonna talk to an AI. And I was like, but if she gives them a better experience and meets them and has an empathetic, buyers will lean into it, right? So we have to think to the future and think to a new way versus think to the way we're doing things today and make things better. And that's where you're gonna build great companies and big companies.
But that is why people love buying from founders. Like the opposite of that experience, the founder just, tells people to fix bugs and they know everything and it's awesome. And then
Fix bugs.
And then you kind of, you tell people to fix bugs. But then you kind of transition from founder-led sales and you're like, this person doesn't quite know as much. They can't move the org around to meet my needs. And so the good news for all of you is people really love buying from founders. And I do too. For example, there's a kind of industry standard call recording tool. I decided not to go with that. We went with one of the upstarts. It's been awesome. They pumped all the call recordings into this other AI tool that we use to generate posts on LinkedIn and like built a bunch of custom stuff for us. So I think actually the 0 to 1 million is like not crazy because you can deliver such an amazing experience, but it's the 1 to 10 is so much harder because you've got to turn what you're doing as a founder into something that is a replicant of that, but is like not done by you. So
what's the tool?
That's so hard. So we use Attention, and we pipe that into Letter Drop. And I actually wrote a post on LinkedIn about AI, and it was generated by AI as well. So yeah, that's how we're doing. Like speaking of salespeople doing everything, all the GTM engineers at Clay are expected to post on LinkedIn and generate their own pipeline, and we of course enable them with the tools to do that.
I think it's interesting. I posted on LinkedIn, it was not written by AI, it was written 100% by me yesterday, about GTM is not just sales, it's sales, marketing, and customer success. And I think in the early days, you as a founder need to think about, I am all three of those things. I am trying to build demand, capture that demand, and set those people up for success. And so I think that's where things get hard once you move beyond it being one person, because it's super easy to do all of that stuff as the founder. You know the product super well. You built this company. You have such a compelling story to tell.
Super easy?
Yeah, well, it's a lot. Well, it's challenging in its own ways, but it's easier than having the 10 people. There are different sets of challenges, and so I think that's one of the things for founders. Like, use that to your advantage to go from 0 to 1, and then you have to figure out how to scale that up. But that's, startups are all about like use the leverage you have. You have certain advantages. You have a lot of things that are hard, but like use the things that make you unique and play to your strengths versus trying to do the stuff that. The big companies can't do that as well. And if they're going to have 10 people on a call that you schedule 2 weeks out, like your advantage is, hey, I'm on the call. I can answer all these questions in one call. So you got to play to your strengths, I think, and what you have as a small startup.
One thing too on that, so Kathleen and I very strongly agree that go-to-market is marketing, sales, and CS. One thing that I would encourage you all to experiment with is where you put the line for the handoff for each. And the handoff should be, if you've ever run track or a relay race, at some point you have 2 people who are running in the same direction and you have 2 hands on the baton. That is how a handoff takes place. So,
except for the US
I
men's
know,
100 meter, devastating.
So bad. But whenever you can move the bounds of where that handoff takes place, but make sure to do 2 things. 1, that you do have overlap and 2 hands touching the baton. But 2, I'll give you the example of what we did and what we changed recently that's been very impactful for our company. We don't do free anything. So we would do a sales process, we would sign a contract, and then we would kind of flip it over into customer success mode where we'd onboard the company, we'd provision an account, we'd start the basic training and do all that. That was the first point in time where they had hands on keyboard. What we learned there is we had slightly misaligned expectations. We had slightly misaligned ways that they were planning to measure success, things like that. Even though we did discovery, even though we had documented this stuff, we moved the line for where we call it a 90-minute POC. We actually provision the account during the sales process. We do 90 minutes where we give them access. Their hands are on the keyboards. They get to walk through it. They get to play with it. They get to actually walk through a real campaign. They see the workflows and they see the quality of the outputs. And at that point, expectations are exactly aligned, but we've now moved that what used to be CS into sales. And similarly with like what blends the line of marketing and sales, just experiment because it can actually make a huge difference in the company.
I think those lines are blurring more and more in this AI world of go-to-market. Like, I think those lines are not where they used to be, and I think they're going to continue to evolve. I want to make sure we leave enough time for questions. So we've got a handful of minutes. Does anyone have questions? Pepe is going to throw the cube if you do. Front row, you don't have to throw it too far.
Check. Awesome. I think I know almost all of you, definitely your companies. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is, there's a certain amount of scaffolding that is necessary to make AI work today. And so when you think about, when I think about Zach, your company, there's a lot of scaffolding because you're kind of helping them understand their strategy. Whereas when I think of Clay, it's actually like you can implement any workflow in Clay and it's kind of like less scaffolding. So with respect to how you guys think about creating your product and product development, how much scaffolding or how opinionated should you get in your product in order to make it effective? Or should you lean towards making it unopinionated and allowing people to be as creative as they want to be, like you said, Everett?
I think it depends where you are as a company. So I think we all need to come up with our beachhead of exactly like, it's really easy to take what we've built and say, now that's going to be your sales trainer. It can be a sales enablement. It can role play. She can be customer success. She can be like a BDR. But we had to get clear, like we're going after PLG companies right now where you have a long tail, and then come up with our real clear like beachhead of our ICP of what we're going after. I think, but as we evolve, I look to be everything. You're everything to everyone across go-to-market. But we're not there right now, and so that's where we're going to put our energy in the early days. So I think it's a question of where in your life cycle of your company you are.
One great thing about more flexibility is it allows you to discover a lot of interesting new use cases. So I'll give you the positive. The negative that we work on every day at Clay is like people come in and they're just like, I don't know what to do, and so you need. The way we solve that is with a strong, vibrant community and ecosystem. And usually people have seen content from us before they hit the tool. But if you don't have that and you have this kind of blank canvas, I think it's probably going to be a bad experience for the user.
What we are seeing is customers want fewer tools and more guidance. They want to be told what and how to do it. How I think a lot of companies, including us and including Clay, are solving that is by templates. It can either be your own generated templates, community generated templates, things like that. But we are definitely finding that our customers are asking us, what are other people doing? How are they seeing success? How do you do this? And so we've just found templates to be the simplest solution to that.
Yeah, I would just add, agree with all that. I think we've seen the first wave of tools have kind of been unsuccessful in being deployed, more or less. So people are looking for a level of like an opinionated tool that can really help them, and they want to believe in it, and they know there's efficiency and gains to be had. So I think that's some level of opinionation is appreciated. And then for us in our own tool, kind of how we're building and thinking about it is, you know, the human being a really essential part of interacting with our tool set. And how can we put the person in a position where, hey, they have a trillion token context window, right? And they are, for the amount of reasoning and logic you can get out of them, it's incredibly cheap. So how do you set up your users to interact with your product in a way where it's very easy for them to help create velocity and outputs that are extremely high quality and on target?
I think that's a good question, though. A lot of what I see founders make the mistake of doing is if you're building like a horizontal product or you have a big vision in your pitch deck to investors, and then you try and ship that on your website and don't ship your pitch deck, like figure out that beachhead or that wedge in those use cases with templates, because people don't want to know that you're everything to everyone. They want to know that you do what they need and do it the best. And so I think there's a difference between what you're pitching and maybe even like building that horizontal product, but the way you go to market has to be more of a wedge in strategy to get that early traction and get those early customers. So I think it's slightly nuanced way of thinking about it, but I see a lot of decks, like what I want to see is like, you're going to build $1 billion business. But if I go to your website and you've shipped that, I'm a little bit nervous of like, okay, how are you going to get those first 10 or 20 or 100 customers to love you? And then you build from there. And you also need to think about the sequencing then from that wedge, but I think it's an important thing to think about as a founder.
You just gave me a good use case that I'm going to do that might be useful for everyone for AI. I think one thing that's also hard is both message testing, but really trying to parrot back what your customers are saying, the language that they're using, the value you're providing, and things like that. It's also easy to anchor on one as opposed to an aggregate. So one idea that could be very impactful, which I'm now going to try, is to throw in a bunch of customer calls and have it try to parse out some of the language that's being repeated by my customers when it comes to pain, value, and like nuanced language from the industry.
Whoa!
I would have had that.
Handoffs.
Really specific question, Elaine. You mentioned you have 8 people on your team, and like, how many people do you think you would have if you didn't have the AI tools you're using, and how far do you think you can go with these 8 people?
I'll answer it in two ways. One, we're a little bit unique in that we have it's me and 2 co-founders. We each own a gigantic portion of the business. I own all go-to-market. One of my co-founders owns all product and design, and the other one owns all engineering. And I think having 3 co-founders who each are like founder-led sales, everyone's selling, but having 3 people who can really take ownership over the big chunks of a business is helpful, meaning we don't need as many strong other people. We have been very good at being even, meaning we make sure that we don't have any massive gaps across each of the business units and that we're kind of hiring in an even cadence for what we need. But I think that you can stay incredibly lean. Like even for us in the next year, we're only planning to maybe double the team. And I think we can still hit our goals of 3xing revenue and things like that with keeping that lean of a team. One thing that, when I was on the VC side, I got to see a lot of founders, and then I went and asked people when I was starting the company, what's one thing you would have done differently? And one of the things that I heard more often than not was hire customer success earlier. And that's actually something that I 100% agree with. We didn't work out, but that is my biggest pain point. And I think you have to think one step ahead of where your business is today and make sure you're hiring for that, not trying to kind of like claw your way back.
All right, we got one more question here. Can you?
Hey, thank you for the session. Question for all of you. Is there a particular stage of a company in which tools like yours become useful, or something that we should look into seeing, like if there's a pre-seed company going to founder-led sales into scale, when is it applicable to start onboarding tools like this that bring in a lot, but in comparison to size of company? Like, what have you seen pitfalls being, or like good timing, so to say?
What's the question? When do we bring on sales teams, like through the
No, for companies that would want to use tools like yours, are there particular stages of which is more useful or practical? What would you advise someone to, when would you advise someone to start using a tool like yours? Oh. At what stage?
When would we advise somebody to use a tool like ours? Is that what you're,
Each of their products?
Each of our
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Shoot.
When do you use OneMind?
Good question. It's probably not now. So, yeah, we probably will price ourselves out of where you're not our ICP. So I'm going to stick to that. Yeah, not now. It's later.
I think it's now. I think
I would agree, Clay. Yeah.
you should start building lists of your customers and contacts right away. Most companies DM outbound their way into their first customers through some means. And so, yeah, I think right now.
We sell to mid-market enterprise too, so we definitely target the larger teams. What I'd recommend though is if you're looking for guidance on what tools are useful, ask founders in the go-to-market space, because I guarantee you if you ask us, we can give you like 50 tools for every type of thing you could do that are targeted more at SMB.
I'd say for us, we can help companies as early as pre-revenue, helping you start to build out and model your initial ICP, your personas, through some of that ideation phase. I would say if you're still in the primordial, we don't really know what we want to be yet, that's going to be tough for us to help, but yeah, and then sky's the limit.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much. I think this was really valuable. So thank you to our panelists. They'll be around if you want to ask follow-up questions.